What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of ASAP, your African Social Activism Playbook. I am one of your hosts, T. Jamal, joined by my sister, Michelee, as always. What's going on, sis?
Good morning to you, brother. I'm doing pretty good right now. Feeling nice and good. Had my little healthy breakfast. Well, lunch. I had a late start actually. So yeah, I just had my breakfast. It's like 1:30. But yeah, I'm feeling good. How about you? How's the family?
Everybody's doing well. I'm doing good. Yeah, it is quite early over here. The sun hadn't even come up, so
Mm,
we getting a good little start to the day. But I like starting early. It makes it feel like the day is longer.
mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah,
staying up all night and doing stuff like that. As I was in my 20s, I did it a lot, and it felt like, okay, my days are getting shorter. It's just because
right.
I was spending most of my waking hours in the night, and it feels like you accomplish more when you wake up early and then you have
Definitely.
more of your daylight. Plus, it's summer. Well, it's still daylight saving times over here. Technically, after Labor Day, summer is over, but it's still during that time period where the days are longer. The sun
Right.
is up until like 9 o'clock. So I love that. I'm not looking forward to that dark season. I don't know how
Okay.
people.
I hate it. It always brings me
Yeah,
down. Like, man, why did the day
yeah.
have to end so fast?
Nah, that's why people go insane when they live in like Alaska and even Portland and like Oregon and Washington State, because they
Mhm.
have some freaky little hours up there too, with being that close to the North Pole and whatever. But yeah, that's why people get so much money to go live in Alaska, because they go through like 6 months where the sun doesn't go down and then 6 months where the sun doesn't come up. That'll
That's
drive a person
crazy.
crazy.
I
Yeah.
know. I thought about that. Actually, I had a friend that lived there. Well, I know a couple people who live there, and I just always thought like, would I feel just just
I couldn't
crazy?
do it.
Like
Yeah,
you in
I couldn't
limbo or
do it.
something. Like, when is the day gonna end? What if you're
Right.
having a bad day? How do
Yeah.
you know if the day when the day ends and you can start fresh?
Exactly.
Questions that need answers.
You need that moon and that sun, that
Right.
balance. So yeah, but now I'm doing good. Getting an early start, which means I have more time in my day later on in the day, which is cool.
Yeah.
But we love providing this for the people.
Mhm.
It's so cool to do this and then know that we did this as I do
Yeah.
other stuff in the day. It's
Right,
cool.
exactly. It make me feel good. Like, it's like it's
Yeah.
nourishment for me, for the soul.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
know,
Exactly.
it's like if I was like the cafeteria person, like, hey, eat this, have an apple.
Uh, exactly. So
Yeah.
we're gonna kick it off today with our straight truth no chaser all week has been the maroon within us, and just pretty much encouraging us as black people across the African diaspora, to know that there is resistance built within us, also built within us. So resistance to oppression, resistance to any type of adversity that comes our way, it's built in us, and our ancestors have consistently shown us that we will not just falter and be pushed over to the side and accept whatever conditions of horror that we are placed in. We will
Right.
always fight back. And the maroon speaks to that part of Africa, that Africa that's born within us, that it doesn't matter where you were physically born. It doesn't matter when. It doesn't matter how long your people have been out of Africa, the continent itself. There's a piece of Africa within all of us, elements of things that we do, ways that we think, ways that we, activate. So understanding what those things are allows us to build toward that African unity that we speak of, to know that it's possible, to know that there is something to grasp on to other than a common struggle. Because that's one of the things that I am so passionate about, that our basis of African unity is not in the struggle.
Yes.
The basis of our unity is based in our actual roots, based in our
Mm-hmm.
similarities, based in our retentions that we have kept from Africa, our practices and the culture. The struggle and the common struggle is something that we do acknowledge, but we don't base every activity that we do off of responding to what other people have done to us.
Right. We're not buying black just because the white folks betrayed us. We support each
Exactly.
other just off the base, like, that's family. That's what we do.
Hmm.
Priorities. We got to prioritize.
Yep. And that's a very important part of that, because sometimes when we build these movements and these moments off of just the struggle, it's like when the struggle part is over, that's why you see some of these movements subside, because they
Yeah,
feel like the only
exactly.
reason that they came together was to fight the struggle, not coming
Right.
together just for the sake of being together.
Definitely.
And
I
that's how we
totally
saw some
agree.
of these things die down in the past.
Hmm.
So we coming
Yeah,
at
that's
this thing from a different mindset. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's the most important thing. And like you said, no matter where we were born or who we even mixed with, whatever soil we've been planted in, we come from the same fruit, right? I mean the
Hmm.
same plant. We're gonna bear the same fruit. So you take
Right.
an apple that was growing in an apple tree that was growing in Africa, right? You take that seed and you take some of those seeds and you go plant them in different parts of the world. It's still going to be an apple. Just because it was planted in Florida don't mean it's about to be an orange. Just
Hmm.
because it was planted in California don't mean it's about to be a grape. Like we're the same. We come from the same fruit, right? The
Yep.
same plant, and we have to just remember that. And like I've been speaking on a few times with just our identity issues, just I mean, it's no wonder how we have just a lot of confusion and stuff, with people identifying, whether it's with a term, you don't want to be called black or African, or you want to be called this or that, but I
Hmm.
think there's something deeper because of the trauma that we've experienced and still experiencing today, um, with us wanting to connect with everything but Africa, with everyone
Right.
but Africa, and so I
Hmm.
think with the education with us, just highlighting some of this information and just pointing out how important it is for us to relearn our history and to continue teaching it, it will encourage people, it will make people encouraged to just to stay more connected, to dig deeper and find out what else has been lost, because
Yep.
that's what's going to get us there. To be able to be unified, to see the value in that, as sticking together and identifying with one another as family. We have to know that we are family and know how we fought and stay together as family. And so these maroon
Hmm.
stories, and we have maroon societies all over, right? Wherever we
Yep.
were, we always rebelled. We never just gave in, right? And so we have a
Hmm.
history of that. Even when we didn't see an out, when we didn't always see, like, the most positive outcome, we didn't know if it was possible, we still fought. So that's important to
Yep.
note. So I've been real excited this whole week. This,
Yeah.
some warriors.
I love these thematic weeks that we've been doing, because it shows that there is so much. It falls in line right with what we're talking about with the playbook, because
Yeah.
so much is threaded together. So many different parts are linked. And this whole week we've talked about three different regions of the diaspora with a common concept that
Hmm.
persisted throughout all of these regions without, you know, instant messenger, without social media, without any type of instant communication
Yeah.
between these people.
Mm-hmm.
different people, different places, similar ideas, which
Yes.
falls right in line with what we're talking about with that common link to Africa,
Yes.
that common thought process.
It's
How
within us.
did how did these people in Jamaica, the people in Colombia, the people in Brazil all have the exact same idea
Yeah.
of creating these fortified communities of protection from enslavement? That means that it's built within you,
Right.
right? Because there's no way that in Brazil they knew what was happening in Jamaica at that
Mm-hmm.
time. Like
Right. You didn't have
it,
WhatsApp back then.
it's
You didn't have Facebook.
and not only did they not have that, we're talking about people who have been captured by the English, people who've been captured by the Spanish, people
And
who've
by the
been captured
Dutch.
by the Portuguese
Mhm.
and the Dutch, not speaking the same language. So even
Yes.
further um, cause for them not to be able to communicate with one another, and yet
Right.
still had the exact same ideas and push to resist
Hmm.
in the same ways. So that right there in itself is amazing and deserves to be spoken about within the same week in the same context, so people can see, oh man,
Hmm.
that really was happening, and it was
Right.
happening concurrently. It wasn't like, oh man, we saw them do it 100 years ago and we're going to do it
Yeah.
now. No, it was
Yeah.
happening concurrently
Yes.
in the same time period. So that part
Hmm.
is dope, which means if it was happening then, when you have an idea and then you hear somebody else say the same sentiment, that's just something that's in the air. That's something that's flowing
Yes.
through a collective consciousness.
Hmm.
It's not somebody stole your idea. That means
Right.
that something in the air is probably going to make whatever that idea is, or whatever that feeling is, actually manifest, because it is popping up in different vessels. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
we're gonna give the idea to that vessel. He
Yeah.
can do it, or if he fails or falters, if she fails or falters, then that same idea is planted within that next person on
Yep.
that other side. And
And
so
that's how
you
it
might
happens.
exactly. And so, it's so dope. And there's an opportunity for those people to work together today with our connectivity. It's not to say, oh man, that person has the same idea as me, I can't do it. No, do it.
Yes. Oh
And
man.
it's not that person has the same idea as me, I got to compete with them. No,
Yes.
collaborate.
Yes. Oh man, you dropping
So,
some jewels this morning.
you know what I mean? So it's just different ways that we have to think about all of these things. But we're gonna
Mhm.
jump into our topic for today. And I dropped some little hints about it. And I've been really talking about it all week with Brazil. And a lot of people don't even realize that Brazil, outside of Nigeria, Brazil has the largest population of African descendants on the
Yep.
planet. So there's
Hmm.
Nigeria, you leave Africa, go to Brazil, and then you come back to Africa. So when we
Right.
think about Brazil, we don't think about Black people, but we we populate Brazil.
Hmm.
It is us. It is, when we talk about Africa is where you are, everything that you know about Brazil is influenced by Africa. Like
Exactly. The culture, exactly
everything.
everything about the culture. And that's the thing. It's like even when like I love watching like food, food shows, like,
Hmm.
they do the food tours and everything. And I'm looking and I'm like, that's like, what we have in the South, like that's what we have, when you look at various, you know, populations, whereas, African people, and
Yes.
it's like these are the same dishes. Even when you think
Yep.
like a lot of places have something that's very similar, like a fufu or ugali or
Hmm.
something like that, right?
Yep.
Like we are the same people. These are the same people, no matter where they landed, no matter where
Yep.
they sprouted from the earth, we are the
Just like
same people.
callaloo and collard greens.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like
Hmm.
we will find those elements. I definitely, one of the projects I want to do is make a cookbook that
Hmm.
is has recipes from different parts of the African diaspora. And before each recipe, it kind of shows you how that recipe, even though it's from Brazil or even though it's from Peru, has elements that come from Africa. And you can see the lineage or the tracing back. And then you can see how all of them kind of mix together, and how food is a representation of how we implement our culture in our daily lives. But on the topic of Brazil, Brazil had one of these war camps or fortified communities, and they were called quilombos. And one of the largest quilombos was the Quilombo dos Palmares. And it was called Palmares because it was like surrounded by palm trees and beautiful, and, you know, had so much water and just nourishment. And it was, you know, the Quilombo term actually is derived from an Angolan language meaning war camp, as I alluded to earlier. And, you know, they knew what it was. They knew that, look, when we escape, we're not just free. When we escape from this situation, we've been captured. We are immediately at war. And it's wartime from the beginning to forever, if we want to, you know, continue to resist or exist in the way that on our terms. If we want to exist on our own terms, we're going to have to fight for that. It doesn't, like they say, freedom ain't free.
Right. And think about even like just the language that we're using, right? In war camp, they know that, you know, this is their settlement. And if you know anything about, like, you know, when a military sets up, you know, anybody's military, when you go and you set up camp somewhere, you have all your supplies and everything that you need to live. These people also took their agricultural skills and, you know, all these other things. They made their own weapons, their own farming tools. They made ceramics and different things to be able to, like, between the food that they grew and ceramics and other things that they manufactured in these, you know, camps that they set up, they were able to trade, you know, and things with different villages nearby to able to still sustain themselves. And we just have to think about, like, all of that. It's not just, you know, like they were really surviving and thriving in these camps because they knew, you know, to separate from the situation that they were placed in. Like, they had to make it happen for them. And like you said, they knew that it was war. It wasn't just over just because they escaped off the plantation. They had to constantly be aware. So you see stuff like we know about, like capoeira and like these are things that they had to develop to survive and protect themselves because they didn't have, you know, like the same military grade weapons and things, you know, as the people who were trying to oppress them. So yeah, it's just important to know that.
And the dope thing about capoeira, like, capoeira comes from, like, African traditional dances. That's something that they were already doing.
Right.
And it was already a form of a martial art. And they were doing that on the plantation. But it looks so much like dancing that they could do it in front of the Portuguese and or the Dutch and not be stopped, because it's like, oh, they're just out there having fun, dancing, you know, being happy, whatever. And we were really training to prepare ourselves to fight back.
Right.
Like, resistance was
smart.
on the mind at all times.
All times.
And that was so dope. So to be fair, we're talking about Quilombo dos Palmares, right? But it was one of the most written about Quilombos, but it wasn't the only one. There were Quilombos throughout Brazil.
Yes.
That they were actually, you know, when Michelee was talking about them doing trade and having communication with other people, it was with other Quilombos and other native groups. So they, you know, there were many of them in different
Mhm.
parts of the country. So, but Quilombo dos Palmares was the largest one, and it was one of the first ones. And it was started
And
when just 40 people got
right.
together and said, "Man, we up out this piece, man. We got we can't do this no more. We
Mhm.
not down with this because the thing
That
is, it was so
SpongeBob meme,
many."
I'm out.
Exactly. It was so many forms of enslavement, and like the Caribbean and South America had, when it was sugarcane, it was very dangerous. Like people were losing limbs like
Yeah,
on a daily because
yeah.
the machine that it took to process cane and to make it into the syrup, not even
Mhm.
the white sugar part, just to process the hard cane into the syrup. You got to stick your hand into this machine. People were losing hands and limbs, and almost on a like day-to-day basis, it was that
Yeah,
threatening. People were dying left and, back and forth. It wasn't just cotton picking, right? It wasn't
yeah,
just what we were doing. So
right.
understanding all the different forms of enslavement is also important. Um,
Hmm. The type of
so
crops that they were tending to.
exactly,
And
it's
all they would
it
do, all the Europeans would do is just import more and more
right,
Africans to,
exactly,
to do the rest of the work.
yep. So, the fact that these 40 people were able to be on the same page and they all escaped together. And,
Mhm.
they developed Palmares, like we said, in this area full of palm trees and waterfalls, and it was fortified, and it helped them, kind of protect themselves, but they were constantly at war. And one of their first leaders of Quilombo dos Palmares was Ganga Zumba, and he was at war from like the inception of the Quilombo till he made a treaty
Mhm.
with the Dutch, and they, you know, as Europeans do, they didn't hold up their part of the treaty, because just like we talked about yesterday, and even the day before with the Maroon is in Jamaica, when they make those treaties, that means they're doing well enough in the war that the Europeans are tired. They're like, okay,
Exactly.
look, just don't take no more, and we'll leave y'all
Mhm.
alone. They made that similar deal with Gangazumba, but they betrayed him and lied to him, and
Right. And
they
poison them.
they right, they poisoned him and recaptured the people in the Quilombo. And one of the people, Zumbi, he was around like 6 years old when Ganga Zumba was betrayed. And he was
Mhm.
sold off to some people, but he already knew life as a free person for like 6 years
Mhm.
of his life, right? So he grew to be very strong, and he escaped and went back to Palmares, and he reset up the Quilombo, and rose up the ranks to become like the king of the Quilombo, and led many wars and many battles against the Portuguese and the Dutch, depending on who had you know rule over whatever at the time. So
Right.
you know we have a little video to talk about
Yeah.
Zumbi, to give you more information about who he was and how, why he's an important figure. And because him being around when Zumba got betrayed actually, made him never ever trust the word of Europeans. So he was
Yes.
never even coming to the table to accept any type of treaty. That wasn't on
Like
the
I've
table
been
for
there
him. So he
before.
was
We
like,
we've
look,
been there before. Yeah, I mean that's the
exactly.
thing though.
Like,
Like even when thinking about and it's a similar concept that a lot of us have even when it comes to politics. Like, okay, it's a piece of paper. What are you going to do to actually enforce it? How are we going to know that you're going to stay true to your word? Because we see
mm-hmm,
time and time again the word is being broken. You want to be all diplomatic in how you settle things, but then you're not even sticking to your word. So yeah, we need
yeah,
to always be military minded, like always think, because these people don't fight fair. We even see how
right.
folks do with other people's with other countries and how they interact with their politicians and stuff. These folks don't care. They will break a treaty like it's nothing.
You gotta
But
be ever vigilant.
yeah, let me point out also before we well,
Mm-hmm.
we're about to watch this video on Zumbi. His wife, his queen, Dandara,
Mm.
she was a warrior queen, right? She was a master in capoeira. She was fighting alongside the men, just like a lot of the women were also fighting with the men, in actual combat, physical combat too. And she was, um good at like with agriculture and stuff, and planted a lot of the crops that they were able to live on and everything like that. So he was definitely, he was married to a warrior queen as well. But let's learn about Zumbi real quick.
And to the ancestors of that maroon community and so many.
Sorry.
1676, a devastating battle against the Portuguese raid caused the leader of the Quilombo at the time, Ganga Zumba, to seek a peace treaty, thinking that it would bring peace and freedom instead of risking being conquered and enslaved. The treaty with Zumba was based on the condition of the citizens of Palmeiras to move to Portuguese territory. And of course, the Portuguese deceived him. Zumba was poisoned, and the Portuguese re-enslaved many of the Africans that followed Ganga. In his absence, a brave warrior by the name of Zumbi became the ruler of the Quilombo. He knew the horrors of slavery very well and never trusted the Portuguese, and was certain that no deal could be made with them. Zumbi was born in Quilombo, Palmeiras in 1655, but was kidnapped in a raid by the Portuguese forces as a child. At the tender age of 15, Zumbi escaped, going back to Quilombo. The great Zumbi fought off the Portuguese for several years, vowing to stay free and independent. Eventually, the Portuguese brought in General Domingues Jorge Velho and Bernardo Vieira de Mello, who made their reputation fighting the indigenous Native Americans in São Paulo, Brazil.
Zumbi dos Palmares.
So they were familiar with the style of warfare practiced by our ancestors in the Quilombo. January 1694, Cerca do Macaco, the main settlement in the Quilombo, fell to the Portuguese and their many cannons. Zumbi was wounded in battle. He eluded the Portuguese to regroup, but was betrayed and captured on November 20th, 1695. Even after the death of Zumbi, the people of the Quilombo continued to resist before completely yielding to the Portuguese. For over a century, even under constant attack, our ancestors showed us the greatest example of self-determination, unity, simply having the desire to live up under their own sovereignty. Our ancestors were fully aware that life under the tyranny of these imperialists was not conducive to our civilization. And because of that, they fought many wars, risking tasting the bitterness of death, so that they, you and I, could hopefully one day enjoy the sweetness of freedom. And to the ancestors of that maroon community and so many others throughout the African diaspora, we say thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and so shout out to the people who created that video,
It
who
was
are
wonderful.
from a channel, The Great Griot, which is, dope. And they have a whole series. Y'all should check them out about who said we didn't fight back. So
Yes.
dope. So,
Mhm.
and they talk about a lot of the resistance that we have throughout the diaspora. Again, not just what we have done here on the North American side, not just what was happening in the Caribbean, but just showing different elements of resistance that permeated across the African diaspora to show that it wasn't just one part, one mindset, that there was a collective, and there was a collective consciousness, even with the absence of communication, like direct communication with people. This was something that came out of us, where we talked about
Right.
the maroons within us. It was in us to not allow our African heritage, our culture, to just be beaten out of us.
Right.
So we were always down. And like she said, Zumbi rose up in, in the wake of Gangazumba being betrayed, and that sad reality of, him actually having some of his followers follow him down, and they all got captured. But the fact that, Zumbi had the wherewithal to escape again, and then still, again, that mind of the champion to not just say, all right, I'm not used to this, I'm going to escape. But not only did he escape, being born free, escape the enslavement situation, but, went back and freed other people who were born into that institution, to bring them to Palmares, to show them, that new way, what was possible. So, that is what we're talking about when we talk about this resistance model, when we're talking about champions, when we're talking about who we need to look to, what plays we need to continue to run. These things and these people are showing us what they've done. And the fact that they have been done once, we can build upon that and see that in today, we probably don't have to battle or war in the exact same way that they warred, but we have to have that warrior mentality. We have to have that mentality of, it's always a battle. It can be on at any moment. So we have to be, ever vigilant. But just think about how far we've come today, where on the shoulders of these ancestors, on the shoulders of the work that they put down, we don't have to worry about, our entire community being gunned down, right? We still have to fear about us as individuals being gunned down, but our entire community just being in a state of like a police state, we don't have that today. So today, if we have that same mindset of when that was a reality, how much further can we go? How much can we develop on top of the kind of the safety that our ancestors have provided us with, the privilege that we have now? If we keep their mindset, we can do so much more.
Right. And also think about just like how right now in 2020, a lot of the struggles that we're facing now, and we have been for the past few years since we've been adults, right? Like all of the tragedy and everything that's going on. Think about how, like, and this is why we need to be in touch with the rest of the world. And that's what I do appreciate about social media and, just the advance in technology, because we can see what other people in other parts of the world are going through. And look at how even with just say the Black Lives Matter protests and things, right? Or the anti-police brutality protests that's going on here. We see how other people, other Black people, and even non-Black people around the world are joining our fight. Think about how that communication, that instant communication, is helping other people to see what's going on with us, and they're fighting on our behalf. They're holding protests. Their government doesn't even have anything to do with our communities, with our police, but they are standing up for us, and we are able to stand up for other people. Look at what our elders did with helping to end apartheid in South Africa. Look at how we can lean on each other, because we're one, right? That's the mindset that we should have. And this individualism does just cut the mission short, because I think, and I mean, it makes sense why we are allowed to have certain privileges and luxuries now, because it keeps us content, right? You don't feel like you're under attack. And so if you don't feel like you're under attack, you can like, oh, well, I can vote to my individual interest because, this is my tax bracket. I'm going to benefit from this and that. We have to not think as individuals only, especially like we are still in a state of war. We're not like, it's not done. When you see that anyone that looks like you or, comes from where you come from, that they can get it, you can get it too. Just know that you miss your paycheck, or you know what I mean, something happens where you ain't got the money, or whatever you feel is protecting you right now and separating you from the rest of your community. It only takes one thing, for you to be in that situation. It could be you too. You see a lot of Black celebrities and well-off people who they've given this talk like, well, we're not the same, like I don't have those issues, and they'll turn around and get discriminated against, or one of their rich neighbors call the police on them. Like, well, who was that? Was the dude that he was going to check his mailbox or something, and his rich white neighbors called the police on him.
Recently?
No, it was a few years. It was several years ago.
Because I know that Dr. Cornel West, he got called for burglary on his own house.
Right, I heard that too.
When I think he had lost his keys or something, and but it wasn't like he was doing anything. He was just walking around his house. I think he was trying to find like where he hides his spare key, and his neighbors called the cops on him. So like it happens all the time. Yeah. And it's like, and not to say, Cornel West, he's consistent. But like you were saying, whoever this individual is that you're talking about, it's all good when everything is going good with them. But as soon as they face any oppression, then they want to be Black. Then they want us to rally around them.
Come on, y'all.
And that is doing to us. We should always keep that mindset. That's the complete antithesis of a champion. It's only wrong now because it's happening to them. Not it's wrong when it was happening to the rest of us, and they'll fight and uplift the rest of us. These are what we're talking about when we're talking about champions. You mentioned something that drives us right into our Monday morning quarterback, though. You mentioned something about knowing about what's happening with other people and why that's important, right?
Right.
And having that instant communication over social media so that we can stay in touch with other people, and how our brothers and sisters have seen what's happening to us, to the fact that they can identify and empathize with that. We know here as Black Americans that gentrification is a thing. What we don't realize is that gentrification is a thing for Black people globally. And we just talked about the Quilombos. The Quilombos were fortified lands owned by those people. And now the Brazilian government is trying to consistently going to legal battles with these people over land rights, and trying to force these people off of the land that their ancestors have fortified and sustained over all of these years.
Again, peace treaty. They breaking the treaties. They breaking these these so-called agreements that they had with these people. Like they earned their keep right there, and they've been living there all of this time. In 1888 or something is around when, in their constitution, they have that these people are protected on this land. They have rights to this land. And so now they're trying to roll back capitalism, right? You see, they're trying to come in and take their land away from them. So
and develop it.
Right. And think about also like what it means for these governments, who are, like in this capitalistic society, and think about what it means to have free Black people outside of the outside of the lines that you drawn and you're trying to, reinforce. Imagine what that, I can imagine that they're panicking, or they've always had it in them, to want to reverse this at some point. They have to roll it back, because you cannot see the people now with the struggles, the current struggles that we have, can't see that, oh, well, there are people who are doing it. There are people outside of this box, so maybe we can be outside of the box too. You can't. They're gonna want to kill that spirit automatically.
Right.
But yeah, we can,
Exactly. Yep.
we can.
So yeah,
get
go
into
ahead.
it. All right.
There's a battle for land raging in Brazil. Indigenous land, untouched forest, Quilombo land. There are an estimated 6,000 Quilombos across Brazil, communities of the descendants of escaped slaves.
We have worked very hard to build these communities, and all of the Quilombola communities are living now with fear.
Quilombolas, as the residents are known, fear the Supreme Court will revoke a law in the 1988 Constitution protecting their status and claim to land.
The Brazilian state needs to recognize this group's rights, most importantly, their right to land. Then all the Quilombolas' other social rights should follow, their right to schooling, to healthcare, and full citizenship.
The communities were founded in remote regions far from the sugar plantations they'd escaped from. They mixed with indigenous people and developed a new culture.
Their ancestors escaped slavery to live in freedom and try to build a future in remote communities like this one. Their fear now is that those hard-won freedoms are under threat from hungry landowners and a society reluctant to recognize their rights.
The current government is supported by agribusinesses and wealthy landowners. Many don't recognize the definition of quilombos and say land claims should be better regulated, that most quilombos don't have official land claims. The quilombolos say they face their greatest threat since the 1888 abolition of slavery.
Everything that is ours is here. Our land, our agriculture, our way of life, our way of doing things. Of course our people do not want to lose all of that.
At least 14 quilombola leaders have been killed this year in land disputes.
It's
a process of resistance that's prevailed for more than 400 years. With all that's been happening in our politics recently, that resistance has to grow a lot more.
Brazil, the world's fifth largest country with more than 8.5 million square kilometers, seems so vast. But in court and on the land, it's still struggling to accommodate its many diverse communities. Daniel Schweiner, Al Jazeera, Sao Paulo State, Brazil.
Yeah. So, and let me point out also that I made a mistake. I said 1881. That was the abolition of slavery in Brazil. So 100 years later, 1988. When I was the year I was born, right? This is not that long ago. The year I was born is when they finally got in the Constitution to grant them this land, allow them, to stay on this land. And that's in their Constitution again. So they're trying to roll back things that were established in the Constitution. So this is a huge fight. You're on mute, bro.
Yeah, man. It's just so important for us to know. I'm glad you brought that point up, that it was 1988. Mm-hmm. These things are constant. They're current. We need to know what's happening with our people.
Yeah.
Like, while we are fighting, it's not us first, then them. It's if we all are fighting together,
right,
then they don't know which way we're coming from. Then we're fighting, together. They have to deal with, the Portuguese are figuring out, and the Brazilian government is figuring out, we got to deal with African Americans too. We got to deal with Nigerians too. We got to deal with South Africans too. We got to deal with Haitians too. We got to deal with Peruvians too. Like, they care. Like, they know what's going on. Their whole thing is that we are isolated. And so long as we are isolated, we are vulnerable to continuously be exploited. This is why we have African Unity Initiative. This is why we talk about the unity across the African diaspora. This is why, I wanted to do this week to do this prequel, because I love the Maroon, Quilombo, Palenque narrative, where it's almost like Godfather 2, where it's a sequel and a prequel, where you see the you see the enslavement period, but you
Mm-hmm.
also see very much the Africa in it. But
Yeah.
then I also wanted to show the different parts of the diaspora and their resistance, because we spoke and we've done a fairly good job of talking about different things during ASAP about the greater African diaspora and what's going on in a lot of different places. But I want to make sure that becomes consistent, so that the people watching can realize that, okay, when they talk about African unity, they really mean what they're talking about. And
Right.
there is something to grab onto, to grab a hold to really respect and, honor different parts and different elements and different activities from the different regions of the diaspora. Because
Right.
when we talk about African unity, one of the elements is knowing, just being aware of what's
Yes.
happening in other
Yes.
places, of what has happened in other places. Because
Right.
that's one of our things where we get into this element of separating ourselves, because
For sure.
people don't know the history of African Americans. People don't know
Mm-hmm.
the history of Afro Haitians. People don't know the
Mm-hmm.
history of Afro Brazilians. And so you kind of just disregard their fight as if it's not, as it's like was it you the other day that said it's like a Olympics of oppression?
Yeah. Yeah. Oppression
Yeah,
Olympics.
it's
Mm-hmm.
an oppression, it's a
Who
competition
suffered
of who
more,
struggled. Yeah,
who didn't do this. And that's the thing about knowing, is that we would learn very quickly that our histories are very similar. They're more similar than they are different. We literally have the same type of history. Like when we were talking about identity and who identifies as Black and things like
right,
that, who can identify with Black culture and this and that. And we don't realize, like, these people, just like our ancestors were dropped off on this part of the world,
right,
they're our same ancestors. Like you said, they had different stops to the boat. You can have one trip that was coming from Africa, because remember, this took months, right, to travel from there to here, and all over the world. And
hmm,
so you have to think about, like, it was more than one stop being made, even on this same ship carrying a group of Africans from the shores
we,
of Africa to South America, to the Caribbean, to North America, and all these different places. And
hmm,
again, being traded off. We literally have the same history, a lot of us, right? And then mixing in with the various indigenous populations, we have the same history,
and
the
people
same
being
struggle.
sold from region to region, from plantation to plantation, from
Yeah,
Jamaica to Haiti, from Brazil
yeah.
to Peru, from Peru
Mhm.
to Virginia. So this idea that, okay, only the people who were enslaved in this country should receive this
Mhm.
is idiocy.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense, and there's no way for you to trace it, because they were still bringing people over even after the slave trade was illegal.
Yeah.
So there's so many undocumented transactions that happened
Yeah.
post it being legal
Mhm.
that were still happening, that we
Right.
don't even know where certain people came from. So this
Yeah.
idea that we should hold tight to a place that enslaved us doesn't really
Mhm.
make sense. When we say we want to bring Africa to where we are, yes, we respect what our ancestors have done and what we have done to build these places up, but not to honor the government of that place.
Right. Exactly.
We
So where
honor
does
where we are,
the loyalty to,
right?
like, we are so attached, but even deeper than that, like when we get into these situations, like and when we've been talking about politics a lot, just given
Hmm.
the, what's going on and everything. We are committed to a certain, political
Party.
party. We dedicated, like, look at how we rep where we come from, like our cities and towns, our area codes and zip
Hmm.
codes. Look at how we attach ourselves, to just the land. And I get it, because that's what we know. But I think, we just have to always dig deeper, because we are very connected. Even we talking about, like, throughout the diaspora, after Africans left the shores of Africa, even thinking about
Hmm.
colonization on the continent of Africa. Think about how they also had struggles. It wasn't like all Africans that didn't get sold off, to the Americas or wherever in the world. Don't think that they just had, like they just having fun, like, oh, let's get rid of them and we just having fun. Because I see also a lot of attitude about, well, they sold us. That was
That's my computer just doing random stuff again.
Yeah.
So,
but I was just saying though, that wasn't the case of just to have this attitude about, well, who's against us, because a lot, we tend to feel that way too, like isolated, like, we were just left out here, to scramble on our own. You got to think about the chokehold that they had and still have on the continent of Africa. You got to think about how slavery had ended long before these African countries even had independence, and they are on their ancestral land. They are on their land. They didn't get independence, so-called independence from these European nations until the 1960s. 1960s. That means a lot of our parents and grandparents were alive by then. That's very recent, and they are still very present in their governments and everything that's going on in those places. So it's not like it was all peachy for them.
All these nations are babies, and the borders that exist on the continent of Africa were pretty much all drawn, with the exception of maybe Ethiopia and Eritrea, by Europeans. So we have to really consider that as well. I always use the analogy of, what is worse, being somebody breaking into your house, kidnapping you, and taking you to like their house and putting you in the basement of their house and chaining you up, or somebody breaking into your house and chaining you and holding you hostage in your own house? They're both horrible.
You're still in right? You're like, still in captivity.
They're both horrible. Colonization is somebody coming into my home and making me a second-class citizen in my home, and I'm a hostage in my own home. I know the house, I know where everything is, but I'm still a hostage. I still can't go where I want to go. I can't open my refrigerator when I want to. I can't go outside when I want to. I still have the aesthetics of everything around me, but I'm still not home in my own home. That can mess with your brain. And also being kidnapped and brought to somebody else's home and put in their basement and made a second, third class citizen will also mess with your brain, because you don't have the aesthetics. You are surrounded by other, and you're learning this new environment. Both are horrible. Like we said, it's not an Olympics. It's not a competition of who suffered the worst. It is, hey, listen, we are rooted from Africa. We need to come together. We have so much work to do, and there's so much potential that we can do unified, so much more than we will ever do isolated and separated from ourselves and looking at each other as different, because so long as we're isolated, they're winning.
Yeah, because what does the enemy do? They divide and conquer, and we know this. We see it several times. Even when you playing PlayStation, when you playing Call of Duty or whatever, your team gotta be tight, right? You can't just go out there on your own. You gotta have somebody watching your back, your front, your sides. When you look at whether you're into sports or video games or whatever, you're gonna see the same idea. You're on a team. People have different roles. Also, we have different plays that can be made, offensive and defensive.
And that's the point, like understanding that African unity is about the diaspora. So we're going to continue this thread where every week we're going to have themed weeks, so that every episode kind of feeds into the next one. So it's much easier to follow, even on the rewatch. As people rewatch the episodes, they'll be able to say, okay, so that week was dedicated to that. We dedicated a week to honoring women in the struggle, which is not going to be the only week. We dedicated a week to resistance, which is not going to be the only one, because, we do this show 4 days a week, but there's so many parts of this. so many regions, so many elements, so many years that these fights have, you know, gone on. This Black freedom struggle is not one that ever ends. The beautiful burden is that it doesn't end. And that's why we wanted to present you with the Maroon, the Quilombo, the Palenque, because their entire existence was war, because they knew that escaping from enslavement and creating this society is a constant threat to what institution they are doing. We are like literally stealing their property. We're freeing our people, but to them, we're stealing their property.
Because
So
how you gonna be free on my land? You know, like how you gonna, and it's just crazy because and just also acknowledging the fact that like just as human beings, we're just gonna have a natural instinct to be free, to want to be free. We're not gonna want to lay down, you know, and just accept it. And I think we also have to just be very aware of the little so-called wins that we have, or you know, just being able to have, you know, certain luxuries and things. Don't think that that's equality. We always have to just be aware that there is war already waged against us. It's not that we are the ones who are doing the attacking. We tend to be like, because we're full of passion and we're you know, we're passionate or angry or you know, whatever emotions that we're expressing, we tend to be the ones that are looked at, you know, as the attackers. But this is war waged against us, right? We're not supposed to be in captivity. We're not supposed to be under, you know, this type of oppression. And it causes all of these different issues when we look at us as individuals. A lot of the things that that we've learned, a lot of the things that we go through as a family unit, whatever, is due to what's going on the outside. So it is important when we talk about like, well, you know, a lot of people, when we talk about financial wellness and things like that. Now, a lot of people are thinking, well, all you got to do is get some money. You know, all you got to do is get some money and then you'll be good. No, it's we got a lot of Black millionaires and billionaires and stuff now, right? We got several Black billionaires. We still ain't free. We got a lot of Black, you know, millionaires all over the world. We still ain't free. We still under attack, right? So it's not just getting the money. We got to understand the whole situation. And it's very complex. We can't make it too simplistic, you know, but that's why going back and getting to the root of it, when you have an infection, you can get like gangrene and stuff. If you don't patch it up, if you don't get inside and dig out and scrape out and you know, and clean out everything that's going on in that infection, it can turn into something way worse. So we have to actually get into it and see what the root of the problem is so that we can cut that off. We can start to heal it. And you know, because we're coming from underground. We have to get ourselves to ground level, and then we can build.
Yep. And just like you said, like there are layers to this. Like it's not just, okay, I believe it's economics. Well, I believe it's social. Well, I believe it's cultural. Well, I believe it's all of it.
All of it.
Together.
All of it.
Like, again, we talked about this yesterday and we've talked about it previously. In Africa, the way we educated ourselves prior to colonialism was a holistic education. There wasn't one subject for math, one subject for science, one subject for reading. It was just learning.
Yeah.
All of it plays into it together. Like when you take certain sciences like chemistry, there's mathematics in it. So there's no dividing them into their just singular subjects. So in the same way, we can't look at society like that. We can't say, okay, this is economics right here. And economics has nothing to do with what's going on socially. And this is the social structure. And that social structure has nothing to do with what's going on with the legal structure. Well, this is the legal, and it has nothing to do with what's going on culturally. All of those elements play into each other.
All of it.
They're so intertwined. It's not even like a Venn diagram. It's just so like a Venn diagram has separate pieces and then overlapping. It's so much more convoluted than a Venn diagram. It's all just mushed up together. Every little thing that you do impacts the next thing.
For sure.
Taking away people's jobs will increase criminality.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cultural impact.
Putting family members that need to be in that household, putting them away in these institutions is going to cause that family to go without, and they're going to be scrambling. The
Right.
children are going to already start off at an unfair level, right? Because they don't have that parent in there. They don't have, balance, and it's just, it creates so much chaos. But we have to realize, like, to fight for all of these things, and that's why we need to be present and show up for everyone in our communities. When we talk about people, different rights, just because you don't identify with that, with that gender or sexuality or age or
individual
class,
struggle.
exactly, all of these individual struggles, if you are not fighting for all of us, if you're not present, showing up for all of us, you're not fighting even for you.
Right.
What are you, like, you're going to be vulnerable too.
Yep.
We just have to think it's holistic. It's a holistic struggle, and we have to think about it that way. We are when we think about our nutrition, with our bodies, working out. Look at how, like, when you start working out, you feeling good. Everything, like, I'm more productive. I'm more like, I'm waking up on the good side of the bed every morning. Like, it's all
you're thinking better, all of it. So when we talk about freedom, we talk about Black freedom struggle, we talk about fighting injustice. It's not just Black Americans. It's not just us in the diaspora. It's continental Africans, people who have voluntarily created diaspora by, moving to Europe and away from their home countries in America.
So true.
They're part of it as well.
Yes.
The people who have been, descendants of the enslaved populations who went through the transatlantic experience. We're a part of that too. So it's not, okay, we're going to deal with Black America, then we're going to move to, it's not incremental.
So
it's
So
together.
to do that.
It's all at the same time, understanding what's going on with everybody and fighting it simultaneously. And it can be done because we are showing you. This is why this show is called ASAP, because it's about immediacy and it's about showing plays that have worked. Like, the plays, they worked.
Yeah.
They were successful, and they can still be successful today, even more so because of how far we've come from the battles that have already been fought on our behalf by those that we are highlighting.
And then acknowledging just the nuances you were talking about, just understanding, like, where we could have fallen short before, how we could have been more productive, right? If we had known to make sure to include everyone. Because I know a lot of our freedom fighters today, we are like, you are fighting for everybody or you ain't fighting at all. It has to be everybody's rights, right? And this is the energy we have to move forward with. And a lot of people have a problem with it because even marginalized people can have certain privileges, and they don't understand how they'll oppress and marginalize other people even within that already marginalized community, right? And so it's a struggle getting people to see how you can be oppressive even if you are oppressed, even if you are an oppressed person. And so we are demanding right now. We're not asking you, we're challenging you, demanding that you fight for all of us. This is what we have to do. We have to put that pressure on each other. Don't let it just slide, because we had, several people who are even still alive today, who are involved with, just say, the civil rights and Black Power movements back in the day. And they talked about how, other people within that community were also still being oppressed, and they felt that, and it slowed down the progress that could have been made, right? Or there is a lot more that could have been done. We don't have to divide the entire struggle into, well, I don't deal with that, so we'll fight for that later. Let's put that on the back burner. We cannot keep putting stuff on the back burner. Look at all of us. Look at how we're all connected and how we can all move forward together, because we are stronger together at the end of the day.
Yep. So, Mish, let them know where they can find you.
You can find me at Michelee the Maker on social media if you want to get in touch with me, and also on my website at mishmashworld.com. My Instagram for my business is mishmashworld.
And go support her. Go follow her. And
I appreciate that.
Support Black businesses. And as always, if you want to get involved with African Unity Initiative as an organization and the work that we're doing in communities, you can visit us on our website, africanunity.us, and see us on social media at African Unity on all platforms. And we actually
comment, and share, subscribe.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely that part. And, we actualize African Unity in so many different ways. Just continue to get involved, continue to tune in, because this show is, going to continue to evolve and grow. And, we're doing things behind the scenes to improve production and all these things. And hopefully we'll be able to interview some of our highlight reels and just make it a better, more entertaining show for you guys, as well as educational, as well as, all the other elements that, make for a good program to watch. So we appreciate you guys for tuning in, for the support thus far. And, we've seen growth already. So we love you guys. We'll see you. What's today? Friday?
Yeah, it is actually. So Tuesday.
So we'll see you guys next week.
This is episode 20, man. We're going.
Exactly. We get
it. All right. Peace. Have a good weekend.
Peace.